Learning Perigim Halacha Vov. The Rambam writes, we learned that there are 43 sprayings that take place. We'll go down to the Peirush. All these 43. He dips his finger in the blood. Tefillah al kol hazoya. He dip it for each spray. He cannot spray two sprayings with one dip each time. The Gesem Mishnah cites the source of this is in the Tosefta and Yuma and Zvochim and in Menachos. Shiur Adom, the leftover blood, obviously the 7 pieces, 7 drops would not be enough, that they shouldn't be left over. And you put it at the foundation on the west side of the outer Mizbeach, which is the closest to the entrance to the Heichel. So we find in Yuma 48b, as it says, "This kol adam yishpoch." All of them should be spilled. And when he goes out from the Heichel, the first corner that he comes to is the western side, because the Heichel is to the west of the Mizbeach, and therefore he pours it at the foundation. There's a 1 amma foundation below the Mizbeach of the outer Mizbeach. Now, a simon for all of these sprayings, the Mari Korkus gave a Zeh Leiv. That 8, there were 8 from the Damapor, 8 from the Damasoya inside this Holy of Holies, another 8 from the Damapor, and 8 from the Damasoya on the curtain between the Holy of Holies and the Heichel. Together we have 16, 8 and 8 is 16 in each area, 16 and 16 is 32. This is to the 22. This is the 32 Nesivos HaChochma, the paths of wisdom. And just like the heart is open to the north within the body, and the wisdom is found in one's heart, Kabbalistically, all of these sprayings are done in the north, meaning in the Holy of Holies and in the Heichel, which is a hidden place. Leiv Chochem Liyaminoi, when the Pasuk says in Kehelis that the heart of a wise man is to its right, it means Leiv Hazizes Haziyois Miyamin, that the Lamed Beis Hazoyos are done from the right. Now, the 11 that are done outside, meaning in the beyond the curtains, 4 on the 4 corners of the Mizbeach, the internal Mizbeach, and 7 on the middle of the southern part of the upper cover, the upper level of the inner Mizbeach. Even though the Mizbeach Apnimi is standing in the Heichel, it's called Hazoyas Chutz. It's called Hazoyas Chutz, Hoyu Yoyse Letzad Chutz, because it was more done to the outside. Why? For Sha'arei Kishemaz al Mizbeach, when he does pour a spray on the Mizbeach, he stands to the east of the Mizbeach, closer to the doorway, and therefore this is in contrast to the sprayings that he does on the curtain. There he stands between the Berachos and the Mizbeach. Therefore, he has the Mizbeach on one side of him and the curtain on the other, and therefore it's considered inward from something, inward from the Mizbeach. However, once he's on the other side of the Mizbeach near the entrance, there's nothing between him and the exit. And that's why it's considered closer to the exit. Now, those 11 sprayings is found, if you want to remember them, it's a posuk in Iyov, Imalet I Noki V'nimlad V'boyer Kapecho. may be able to flee the one who is not clean, and he shelters in the pit of your hands. E is numerically equivalent to 11. So the 11 springs, they cleanse and forgive the sins, and we can flee, we are saved from the punishment. The second part of the pasuk is means with the hands and their cleanliness. That means by doing tshuva, that is similar to all of the entirety of the springs. Is also a pasuk in Eoiv. Gam is atoiv nikabel. Gam is 43. Good, I will accept. The 43 springs that we do, that the Kohen Gadol does on the day of Yom Kippur, will be accepted as good. Now we're going to learn Perek Gimel Halacha Zayin. The Rambam begins after V'agach. After he has done all the springs, Mishalech Zasoya Chai, he sends the goat which is standing by the gate, Piat Ish, in the hands of a person. Let's go down to the Peirush, and after he's finished these 43 springs, he sends the live goat, because the other one was slaughtered to take the blood, and he sends it via Ish Hamuchon, a person who's prepared from Erev Yom Kippur Lo'ilichoi Lamidbar, to bring it to the desert. It need not be a Kohen, it could be anyone. But the Kohanim Gedolim established a rule: they would not permit a normal Yisrael who's not a Kohen to take it. This is a Mishnah Yuma 66a. Rashi explains that they did it on their own volition, and the reason was because they wanted everything to be done only through Kohanim, even though the majority of the work was done by the Kohen Gadol. They would make booths from Yerushalayim till the beginning of the desert. It's a Mishnah in Yuma. And there were people who would dwell in them for all of Yom Kippur. Even before Yom Kippur, they would come there, so they should be able to do it. Now, the distance between Misukah and Sukkah, from one Sukkah to the other, as we'll see, the distance is 2,000 or more cubits, which you cannot go beyond that point. Whenever he came to any Sukkah, he had food there, they would say to him, Harei Mozing, you're allowed to eat if you're not strong enough to carry the goat all the way. Harei Mayim, and you have to know if he becomes hungry. Im Koshel Koiche, if he is really exhausted, it's and he need to eat, he can eat. We never find that anyone ever needed to eat. This is the language of the Bryce in Yuma 67a, that they never came to a situation that he had to eat. The Gemara explains that they prepared him food, and because that in itself helps him continue. Once he knows he can have food, then a person isn't as hungry as when he doesn't have food, doesn't have that much desire. The people of the last sukkah, the last booth, they can only go 2,000 cubits, and they stand from where they are, they can see where he is pushing the goat over the mountain, from a distance they view it. What were the actions that he did with the goat? He divides up the tongue of red wool that is tied to the goat's horns. As we learned before, half of it he ties to a stone, shtei karnov, and half of it he ties between the horns, and he pushes the goat backwards to the precipice, the edge of the mountain, and he rolls down the mountain, and it's called a tzuk, a very steep cliff, and from there he would push it backwards so that it couldn't gain any footing, and it would tumble over. And the goat would not come to half of the mountain before until he was broken and died. That only in the days of Shimon HaTzadik the goat always perished when he was pushed down. But when Shimon HaTzadik was nifta, there were goats that fled. They made it to the bottom. The Sarikim, and these were the people who lived in the deserts, would eat them. Then he had the right to come back to the last sukkah, last booth, and there he had to stay until at night because he had no longer permission to go. And this is all found in the Mishnah Yuma 67a. Rashi explains, even though if you go beyond the Tchum, even B'Shus, you only have Alpayim Amma from where you went. The Ishiti went beyond the 2,000 Amas, and they saw him, they viewed him, and he could come back because he is weakened. And furthermore, that he doesn't want to stand alone in the desert when it becomes dark. And they would also make these pedestals, manifim besudorim, and they would wave with flags. In other words, from each booth you could see the other booth, and they would pass the message along, because in the Mishnah it says that the Kohen Gadol had to know when the soyer reached the midbar in order to continue the service of Yom Kippur. Before that he can't continue, and everything has to be done in order. Now in our Mishnah it says the words are spelled dir cho'ot. It means the ways. Like they made big stones, they would stand on it as a pedestal till the last one, and they would make a sign. Yontiv says darboyos. Because of the word ravne, they would watch it. And that was their posted watchmen. Rambam in Peirush HaMeir explains matzoyos gedolos, big mats. Yontiv edits this, and he says matzevis gedolos, that it's a mistake between the aleph, the ayin, and the tzaddik, and the beis. And like the Bostoner says, large stones, you could stand on them and you would be visible, and one could see from one to the other until they came to the knowledge of the Kohen Gadol. The Arash Mishaleach is Asoya. However, after he sends away the goat, Biad Melichoy, in the hands of the person who's bringing it to the tzuk, which is called Azozel Choiza Ezel Par Asoya, he goes back to the slaughtered bull and the goat from which the blood was taken. The blood was taken to be sprayed inside the koiron. He opens them up, and he takes out the innards, because the innards have to be brought on the mizbeach. The noisem beklini would place in the holy vessel, maktiron al gabe mizbeach, and he would then bring up the chelev, the innards, on the mizbeach, umachatech shar b'soron, chatiros gedolos. Then he would cut up the portions of their body into large pieces. Mu'urois, they were attached to each other, zu bezu, one to the other, come in clear, like tied together. The enam mefarikos, and he doesn't separate the parts. Mishalchon, and then he would send it outside of Yerushalayim. Biyad acherim, for others, lo yitzion beis hasreif, to take them to the place of burning where they were totally consumed in fire. Umanatchon oison shom beoiroi kemoisha bi'arnu, and they would cut it up over there After they brought the Amorim on the Mizbeach, they would cut it up, as we explained, with his skin. As the Mishnah explains, he's pointing out that in Hilchos Yom he writes that you take the leftovers of the bull and the goat outside the city, and there you cut it up like ola with its skin, and you burn it in Beis Hadeshen. That, in oila, you should bring on the Mizbeach, you take off the skin, and then you cut it up. And here, the Parah and Soya, they would cut it with the skin, and they would burn it with the skin in the Beis Hadeshen.